In 1778, the American Revolution was in a stalemate in the North, so General Cornwallis shifted his focus to the southern colonies in an attempt to leverage the Loyalist militia. In the fall of 1780, the over-the-mountain men came from modern-day Tennessee and Virginia to South Carolina to fight Patrick Ferguson and the Loyalist militia at Kings Mountain. The Patriots' victory at the Battle of Kings Mountain was a turning point in the Southern campaign because it took out one-third of Cornwallis's forces, crushed the Loyalist spirits, and eventually forced the British to Yorktown, where they surrendered. The American Revolution began at Lexington, Massachusetts in 1775. For the next 3 years, the majority of the war was fought in the northern colonies. By 1779, the war was at a stalemate in the north. Cornwallis had heard that there were many Loyalists who would help support the British Army in the south, so he moved his army to the southern colonies. In April of 1779, Sir Henry Clinton led a siege to Charleston, with battleships and close to 13,000 men. General Lincoln was defending Charleston with over 6,500 men. 6 weeks after the attack began, the British started firing hot shots that would burn the houses down in minutes. The people of Charleston started demanding that Lincoln surrender, and on May 12th, he and his men finally surrendered. The British captured nearly 2,500 men, over 300 cannons, and about 6,000 muskets, along with large quantities of gunpowder. Now Cornwallis focused on the rest of South Carolina.
Cornwallis was coming up in 3 paths. He brought his main army up through Charlotte, and he brought Bloody Bannister Tarleton up the Kings Mountain or Kings Road on the east side, and he sent Major Patrick Ferguson out on the west. And
Colonel Buford and his 380 men from Virginia retreated to the north. Lord Cornwallis sent Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton to find them. On May 29, 1780, Buford found himself in a battle with Tarleton and his Loyalists. Tarleton surrounded Buford's men, so Buford waved a white flag for surrender, but Tarleton wouldn't accept his surrender and refused the call for quarter. According to Dr. Brownfield, a witness to the event,
they went over the ground, plunging their bayonets into everyone that exhibited any signs of life, and in some instances, where several had fallen, one over the other, these monsters were seen to throw off on the point of the bayonets the uppermost to come at those beneath.
Even British officer Charles Stedman wrote,
"The virtue of humanity was totally forgot."
The Patriots remembered this defeat and wanted revenge against Tarleton and the British. In May of 1780, Lord Cornwallis was told to protect his supply depot in Camden. General Gates with his American patriots were brought to South Carolina to face Cornwallis and his troops. Gates engaged the Loyalists, not knowing that the British soldiers were waiting to fight alongside them. In the end, the Americans retreated, adding another defeat. At this point, the Patriots had suffered major losses in the South. In total, 10,697 Patriots fought from February 11, 1780 through August 16th. 7,722 souls were lost in battle. All in all, the Americans lost 72% of those who fought in these battles, while the British only lost 599 Loyalists. During the summer of 1780, Patrick Ferguson was frustrated with barbaric attacks by the Patriot militiamen. So on September 7th, he sent a prisoner named Samuel Phillips from Gilberttown, North Carolina, with a message for the Patriot leaders across the Appalachian Mountains.
And this is what he told them. He said, "You lay down your arms, you pledge loyalty to King George, or I will march my army over the mountain. I will hang your leaders, and I will lay waste your homes and crops with fire and sword."
Upon hearing this information, Isaac Shelby decided to get with John Seaver and plan their next move. They decided to go over the mountain and hunt down Major Ferguson. They also sent messages to Arthur Campbell and William Campbell from Virginia and Colonel Benjamin Cleveland from Yadkin Valley to gather at Sycamore Shoals near Fort Watauga on September 25th. Colonel Charles McDowell heard about this and brought men from Rutherford County, North Carolina. On September 30th, they all left Sycamore Shoals to search for Major Ferguson. For several days they chased him. Finally, on October 6th, they stopped to camp at an area known as Cowpens. Major Ferguson knew that they were close by and decided to make his last stand at King's Mansion. He sent one last message to Cornwallis asking for help.
I am on my march towards you by a road leading from Cherokee Ford, north of Kings Mountain. 300 or 400 good soldiers, part dragoons, would finish the business. Something must be done soon. This is their last push in the quarter.
The Patriots knew their enemy was close.
The commanders got together. They had finally a location for Ferguson. To catch him, they went through the camp and they picked out the 900 most fit men and most fit horses. They knew that Ferguson was only about 20 miles from the lines of Cornwallis, and we were not strong enough to take on Cornwallis and his entire British army. So we knew we had to move and move fast.
They prepared and set out for King's Mansion that night. The rain softened at the sound of the horses' footsteps. There was no dust cloud due to the rain. Major Ferguson did not even know that they had arrived. Colonel Campbell told his men,
"Shout like hell and fight like devils."
They surrounded the mountain.
At the King's Mountain, the commands were given. Every man his own captain, and we attacked.
They went up the mountain, hiding behind trees and rocks. The Loyalists had the high ground, but they shot over the Patriots' heads. They used bayonet charges to force the Patriots back down the hill. When they reached the bottom of the hill, they ran back up only to find Patriots advancing on the other side. The Patriots ran up the hill, yelling,
Remember the Waxhaws!
Some of the Loyalists began to wave white flags from their bayonets. Major Ferguson rode around, cutting them down, refusing to surrender. At the top of the mountain, Ferguson was shot multiple times and fell from his horse. His foot was caught in the stirrup, and he was dragged down from the mountain by his horse. After his death, the Loyalists surrendered.
And they met at Fort Watauga on September the 25th, and they rode for 13 days in the pouring rain, and they whipped Ferguson on Kings Mountain in an hour and 5 minutes. That's how long the battle lasted.
The Battle of King's Mansion was, in the words of Thomas Jefferson,
The turn of the tide of the Revolutionary War.
The staggering victory for the Patriots nearly shattered all Loyalist morale, causing the British to lose their supply of enlisting Loyalist civilians.
Prior to this battle, American forces had been destroyed and defeated again and again, to the point that the British commander, Lord Cornwallis, thought that the war was over in South Carolina. He believed that he had completely subdued the former colony, and it was now time to march north. However, nobody had told that to the Patriot militiamen, and they were able to gather together in numbers great enough to inflict a decisive defeat on Patrick Ferguson. And in the aftermath of that defeat, people's perceptions are going to be changing. Maybe that the war's not over in South Carolina. Maybe we can still win.
With nearly a third of his forces gone, General Cornwallis sent Tarleton and his army to recover the remnants of the battle. However, he was intercepted at Cowpens by Daniel Morgan and the Continental Army. They were sent by General Washington after hearing of the victory at King's Mansion. Tarleton lost the Battle of Cowpens. At this point, Lord Cornwallis was in a difficult position. He had lost 2/3 of his army. He began his retreat to Virginia with Morgan and the Continental Army in pursuit. This event became what we refer to today as the Race to the Dam. By that point, the British forces were wounded, they were out of ammunition, and their supply of food was running short. They decided to retreat to Yorktown, where they ultimately surrendered.
12 months and 12 days after Kings Mountain, he had to surrender at Yorktown. And if it wasn't for Kings Mountain, Cornwallis would have rolled up North Carolina and taken Virginia.